Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to the first podcast episode of 2026, and it is number 309. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the topic of beliefs and what beliefs do you possibly have that might be holding you back in your leadership role or even your life in general. It's a really important topic. I'll talk about a few stories of my experiences that have led me to my conclusions. So let's get into this topic right now. Our beliefs are one of the strongest things that drive our behavior. And interestingly, I've had a few experiences over my life and career where I've noticed my beliefs really shaping how I showed up and actually really holding me back in some instances. Now, the first example I'm going to talk about is not really a leadership or career belief. It's more about my fitness and exercise and all that sort of stuff. So I used to jog a lot when I was younger. So I used to do a lot of martial arts training, and as part of that, preparing for that stuff, I used to go jogging a couple of times a week. And I always struggled with jogging. I just felt I was always out of breath. I felt like I was quite bad at it. I noticed myself improving, but I always felt terrible at the end of runs, even though I was getting faster. And I was talking to my family about this, and we talked about various things. Like, I've got Dutch heritage, right? So my mum's family are from Holland. And they're quite big people. So as in big frame, like 6 foot tall at least. And so the sort of phrase that got bandied around was, oh, heavy people, as in not necessarily overweight, but just heavy frame, big bone, sort of heavy set people. And so I inherited that heritage, right? And some of those traits. And so in my mind, I always had this thing in my mind about, oh, well, our family, we're sort of big people. So, running and things like that are not for me. And we also had a thing where a couple of my parents had knee injuries as well. They did a lot of exercise as well. And, they had knee injuries and surgeries. My brother had a knee injury playing soccer years ago. And over time, a little bit of a narrative developed in my family, which was, oh, we've got bad knees, all that sort of stuff, right? Hereditary weaknesses in our knees and joints and that sort of stuff. So over time, all this sort of added up to me going, well, I'm just not good at running. I'm not going to be good at it. It's just not for me. And interestingly, a couple of years ago now, about 2.5 years ago, I actually lost a lot of weight. I was never really overweight, and I used to play a lot of sport, and I do a lot of exercise. So, I exercise 5 or 6 times a week. But I was a bit more chubby than I liked, right? And so I was thinking, this is weird, isn't it? Like, I exercise 5 or 6 times a week. Why am I, heavier than I want to be, even though I am quite active and fit? And once again, that whole belief came up from my family and my upbringing, which was like, oh yeah, we're just heavier people, right? And I sort of had it in my mind that, it was normal at the point where I was at that time. And I thought, yeah, I'm just not someone who's going to be like a thin person or, a lean person because of my heritage and that sort of stuff. So interestingly, I started actually looking into this and thought, well, hold on, 5 or 6 times a week exercise, I'm fairly fit, I play a lot of sport, all those good things. Why am I not leaner, right? Why do I not look fitter, and why am I not lighter? And then I started doing a bit of research into calorie counting and just like looking at logging my food and seeing what I was eating and all those things. And interestingly, I noticed that, well, I'm just eating too much stuff that's not really great for you. Not in the sense that I was eating fast food all the time and things like that, but just food that was possibly high in calories that wasn't actually good for me necessarily, or wasn't good for my weight. So that's why I was sort of just kept maintaining the weight. So interestingly, I started logging my calories and that sort of stuff, seeing what I was eating and that sort of thing. Ended up losing about 11 kilograms. So I went from playing basketball at a weight of 90 kilograms at 6 foot tall down to what my current weight is now, which is 78 kilograms. And I'm leaner, fitter, stronger than I ever have been. And I'm 45 years old now, almost 46. So interestingly, it took a little while to unravel that belief that, oh no, that's just not who you are, right? You're just not a lean sort of athletic person, all that sort of stuff. And now I'm the leanest I've ever been, the lightest I've ever been. And I almost can't believe it myself because I always associated, athletic performance with being quite heavy because of, muscly people and being quite heavy in terms of kilograms and that sort of stuff. So I thought that was really interesting, these beliefs that I was carrying around in my head that I'm just not good at that. So then what happened was, after I lost 11 kilos or so, I thought, this is interesting. Maybe I should go for a jog. It'd be interesting to see what jogging feels like when I no longer weigh 90 kilograms and I actually now weigh 78 kilograms. And not surprisingly, it was a lot easier to jog when you're 12 kilograms lighter. But then I also started doing research into jogging and how to jog and the things to keep in mind, and discovered that a lot of it is about maintaining your heart rate at an acceptable level for you, a lowish level, so that you can maintain your endurance for longer and you can actually build up the energy stores in your cells so that your body gradually adapts to be able to run longer and faster with less effort. And that was really interesting for me because it was a bit of a light bulb moment. It's like, oh, you don't actually have to kill yourself running every day. You actually can run slower and easier and develop the capacity to run longer and better and faster over time. The reason all this was escaped me because I'd never really done any research into this. And so now I'm jogging 2 or 3 times a week when I can, and I'm getting faster and faster and my heart rate is staying lower. I'm just getting fitter in that regard. And once again, this is all these beliefs that I had that, oh no, I can't, I'm not a jogger, right? My family's not joggers, we're heavier, all that sort of stuff, which was actually just not true. But it's something I carried around with me for ages. And I actually stopped doing things and didn't do things because I'd sort of told myself that, oh, that's normal. That's the belief that I had. And so, from a work perspective, another example I can think of is when it comes to public speaking, and I talk about public speaking quite a lot and write about it as well. And as some of you might know, I used to be very, very scared of public speaking. So I remember when I was at university, I was doing zoology at the time, and we had to give a presentation, and my presentation was absolutely horrendous. And I was looking at my paper, my hands were shaking. I had very little public speaking skills or experience at that point. And I remember the lecturer or the professor who was sort of judging these presentations really ripped me to shreds in front of everyone, saying how bad the presentation was and all that sort of stuff, which was obviously not a great thing for him to do. However, that really stuck with me. And so I started to just avoid public speaking like the plague. I would take any opportunity to not do public speaking, to the point where I learned that I had to give a presentation in one of my other courses years later. And I actually transferred out of that unit because I thought I would have to do a presentation. And so I was so scared of it that I removed myself from that situation. Now, interestingly, at work, I sort of never really needed to do presentations and speak publicly early on in my career when I was doing software development and all those sort of things. So it was all fine. Then when I started my consulting career, I realized that, oh, this is really going to hold me back, this public speaking thing, because I'm going to have to present in front of, executives and steering committees and all this stuff and give presentations and all those good things. And so I started to look into it. And it was one of these beliefs that I had, once again, it was a belief that I'm not good at public speaking. I can't do that, is what I used to tell myself, is that self-talk that goes on in your head. And this led me to avoiding things or not taking on opportunities. It was very limiting for me. And once I started doing some research on, oh, there's actually public speaking groups that you can go to and they learn about public speaking and they practice and they get better. And once I did that, and as I've said before, I went to Toastmasters, which is a public speaking club, for 2 years. And it was amazing. Best thing I ever did in terms of my career, probably, because I basically gained that confidence, did a lot of practice and was able to speak quite well. And I do a lot of public speaking now because I deliver training courses and all those sorts of things. So these sort of beliefs can be really damaging if you just let them fester and build and grow in you. And this brings me to the topic of fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Now, a fixed mindset is what I was exhibiting when it came to my fitness and my public speaking and all those sorts of things in the examples I just shared earlier. So a fixed mindset is basically where you believe that the characteristics that you have when you're born are pretty much fixed. You can't do anything about them. That's just the way you are, and that's the way you're always going to be. That characterizes a fixed mindset. So obviously you could see that when I say that, it could be quite damaging, right? If you just believe that I'm just not good at this thing and I'll never get better at it and that's just the way I am, you really can limit yourself and your development. And the opposite of a fixed mindset is what they call the growth mindset, which is really about, well, I can improve, I can practice, and I can learn, and I can get better and actually grow. And that's the mindset we want to encourage when it comes to leadership and those sort of things, any sort of self-development. So obviously it's better to have a growth mindset because you can believe that you can improve, and that belief actually starts to come out in your body language and your behavior and your actions because you believe that you can get better at things. So this episode, I wanted to just get you to think about this topic. And as with all of my podcast episodes pretty much, and my articles that I write, my intention is to help you consider different aspects of your leadership and your life in general, to get you reflecting on how you are, where you're going. It's not to say that you might have a problem in this space, but it's to get you to think and to be thoughtful about what's going on for you and whether this is something that could be an issue for you with regard to your beliefs. And so what the first thing I'd recommend for this sort of thing is to look for situations or try to notice or be mindful of situations where your self-talk is saying that you can't do something, or it's saying that you don't do those things. So self-talk is that little voice in your head which says, I'm not good at this, I'm an idiot, or I'm great, you're awesome, right? That little voice that is on your shoulder, it's like a little angel or devil on your shoulder which sits there and talks to you. And it's really just your brain coming up with these thoughts. The interesting thing about self-talk is you don't have to believe it. But what happens is because you assume that self-talk is coming from you, it's not just a random thought in your brain that your brain generates, we believe it, we start to take it on board. So if we say, I'm a failure, I'm useless, I'm no good at public speaking, all this sort of stuff, your self-talk can really reinforce these negative beliefs that you have. And so what I'd recommend is to look out for these situations and look out for the way you speak about yourself or to yourself. And if you find that you are avoiding things or you're not trying things or just saying you can't do things, and that's coming from your self-talk, that might be a belief that is holding you back. And one of the common situations I see this happening with thoughtful leaders is the quieter leaders who say, oh, no, I'm an introvert, I can't do that, or I don't do presentations, that sort of thing, right? Or I don't run meetings, or I don't speak up, or something like that, right? And when you start saying things like, I don't do that, that's almost like it's become baked into your identity. So I'm not someone who does that stuff. I'm not someone who speaks out against bad things in the workplace, or I'm not someone who delivers presentations. And once you have that baked into your identity, it's easy to go around avoiding situations like conflict or difficult discussions or, asking for that raise at work or whatever it might be. And yeah, it becomes baked in. So what I'd do first is to look for that self-talk and try to notice the way you speak to yourself. And if you do uncover one of these beliefs where you go, that's interesting, maybe I can get better at that, but I just haven't really thought about it, or I just have dismissed it, start to get curious about it, learn more about the topic, how to get better at it, and find someone who's a trusted guide, like a mentor or someone who's an expert in the area, to learn more about the topic and learn more about how you can improve and see what sort of things are available to you, because often the times when your beliefs are the way they are is because you've just never questioned them. You've never really come across a contrasting point of view or any data or information that tells you that there's another way to do things or that belief that you hold is not necessarily true. So get curious, start to learn more about the topic, Find an expert who can help you and help you think differently, and investigate. Because sometimes our beliefs are the things that just hold us back, and they bleed into that self-talk, which can be really limiting. So that's what I wanted to cover today in today's episode, was really to get you thinking about any beliefs that you might have based on your upbringing or your early life, whatever it might be, that may be holding you back when it comes to leadership and maybe stopping you from, being more outspoken or giving presentations or being more prominent in your workplace, for example, maybe being more assertive as well. All these things often come from our beliefs. Now, obviously, values work can help with this. So I talk a lot about personal values, as you would know. And personal values, I love the activity of digging into personal values and working out what they mean from a practical perspective. So I do have an online course that can help you do that if you're interested. I'll put it in the show notes page. The show notes page for this episode is thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/309. And there'll be a link to that Discover, Understand Your Values online course on that page. It can be a really good one. It's practical. It's, fairly short. It's like an hour of video in there. It guides you through the whole process of trying to learn more about your values and what they mean about your behavior and your attitudes at work as well. That can be really useful. And of course, I do leadership coaching as well. If you think that coaching support could help you to unlock some of these values or to realize your potential this year in 2026, please get in touch. I'll put a link to my leadership coaching page on that show notes page as well. So this was the topic I wanted to cover today, all about beliefs. And hopefully those stories were useful. And it'd be interesting to see whether anything jumps out for you in terms of when you notice, oh yeah, maybe I believe that thing that might not actually be true, and maybe it's holding me back. If anything jumped out at you from this episode, I would love to hear about it. So put a comment in the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/309. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, you can add comments on Spotify as well and all those good things. Of course, if you like this podcast, I would love you to give me a positive rating. So 5 stars on Spotify or Apple or whatever it is you're using, your podcast app of choice. Helps me get the word out about thoughtful leadership and this podcast. Okay, thank you very much for listening to the first episode of 2026. Hopefully that got you thinking about, maybe what are my beliefs like? That's the idea of this podcast. I'll be back next week.